Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about what's happening in the economy in Argentina. And for all of the naysayers who send me messages saying, your channel's really depressing, you only make videos about doom and gloom, you'll be pleased to hear that there's actually some good news coming out of Argentina in today's video. The budget for 2024 came in at a record-breaking level, and there's also some good news about the currency. However, it isn't quite time to get out the champagne and the bunting just yet, because inflation is still sitting at more than 100%. However, as the famous saying goes, Buenos Aires wasn't built in a day. Is that the famous saying? Something like that anyway. It's going to take Javier Milei some time to be able to turn around the supertanker and to actually improve things in the economy, but we are definitely seeing some green shoots at the moment. Things are starting to take shape. And the big question is, will he have time to be able to get the economy back on track before everybody in Argentina actually gets sick of the austerity measures? So let's kick off the data with some really good news. This chart shows Argentina's trade balance, so basically the difference between the value of its exports and the cost of all of its imports, dating back to 1910. And what you can see on the right-hand side of this chart is that in 2024, Argentina achieved a positive trade balance of around $19 billion, which was the largest in its history. And if we look at this chart, which shows the monthly breakdown of the fiscal budget from September 23 through to December 24, and the dotted line here shows when Javier Milei took over as the president of Argentina in December 23. You can see that immediately after taking over as the president, he turned around 4 consecutive months of negative positions into a positive balance. And the Argentine economy managed to maintain that positive fiscal balance in every single month through to December, when it did fall back into negative territory. But as we've just seen, overall for 2024, Argentina delivered a record positive result. So how did Javier Milei manage to achieve that? Because it looks like a bit of a miracle. Well, it was a combination of an increase in exports. Argentina actually became a net energy exporter. It was exporting gas and oil from its shale reserves, as well as soy products, wheat, beef and corn. They're the main big earners from Argentina's point of view. But in combination with that increase in exports, it also cut its imports dramatically. And this is the austerity measures that have been brought in by Javier Milei. He's cut back on Argentina's spending in a lot of different areas to balance the books. And that's one of the problems that Argentina has right now, is that a lot of people are complaining that they're not being given as much by the state in order to balance those books. Now, before we go on any further today, I want to talk to you about Ground News, who I've partnered with to bring you today's video and who I've been working with for the past 2.5 years. And they're offering Joe Blogs viewers an exclusive deal whereby you can get a 40% discount on their Vantage plan, which is what I use. And what's brilliant about Ground News is that they're a news aggregator. They bring together stories from all around the world. And if we look at the articles that Ground News have pulled together talking about Argentina's budget, you can see that they've collated 51 different articles. And what's great about Ground News is it gives you the political bias. It tells you whether that news source leans to the left, to the right, or from the centre. And that's important to me when I'm trying to provide unbiased coverage. And the great news is that Ground News is offering Joe Blogs viewers a 40% discount on the unlimited Vantage plan, which you can access by scanning the QR code on the screen now or clicking in the link in the description below. This chart shows the official exchange rate between the US dollar and the Argentine peso over the past 5 years. And as you can see from this chart, there is a vertical section in December 23, when Javier Milei devalued the official rate of exchange for the Argentine peso from around 350 pesos to $1 to 800. And one of the reasons that he did that was because there was such a massive difference between the official exchange rate that was being managed by the Argentine government and the blue dollar rate, which is the black market rate for the Argentine peso. He wanted to bring the two closer together to reflect reality. And in addition to devaluing the peso, he also introduced a 2% crawling peg devaluation. So basically, every single month, the peso devalues by another 2%. And this chart shows the blue dollar exchange rate, or the black market rate for the Argentine peso against the US dollar. And what you can see here is that in December 23, when Javier Milei took over as the president, the black market rate was trading at around 1,000 pesos to $1 compared with the official rate of 350. So that's the reason why he devalued the peso. Now, immediately following the devaluation, the black market rate actually got worse, and the peso is trading at around 1,250 to the $. However, by April 24, the black market rate had returned to around 1,000 to the $. However, as things got worse in the Argentine economy, the black market rate deteriorated, and by July 24, it was down to 1,500. However, over the past 6 months or so, there has been an improvement, and it's currently trading at around 1,200. And in view of the improvements that are now being seen in the economy, the Argentine authorities have now announced that the crawling peg will be reduced to 1%. So the peso will devalue at a rate of 1% per month from February 2025, compared with the previous devaluation of 2%, and this represents a significant improvement. One of the other initiatives that Javier Milei announced that he was going to undertake was to privatise some of the state-owned businesses that have been costing the Argentine economy a lot of money. They've been a drain on their finances because Argentina has had to fund all of their losses. And the first of these privatisations has now been formally announced. The state-owned metal firm IMPSA, which makes turbines, cranes and lots of things for the energy industry, which was actually nationalised in 2020 following the COVID-19 pandemic, and has been causing problems in terms of all of the losses that the government has asked to fund. It's got debts of over $575 million. There was a formal sale process that was put into place, and it's now been sold to a US consortium, and the biggest investor in that American consortium is Arc Energy. And there is now a lot of speculation that Argentina's state airline is also being prepped for a privatisation. Aerolíneas Argentinas has announced that it's cutting 13% of its staff, it's stopping its non-profitable routes, and cutting out things like free snacks for passengers. And this comes off the back of a record set of results for 2024 since the airline was nationalised back in 2008. So it looks likely that this could be the next candidate for privatisation, and it's likely that there will be more and more Argentine businesses that are put back into private hands, as Javier Milei wants to reduce the burden on the state. This chart shows the official rate of inflation for Argentina over the past 12 months. And what you can see here is a game of two halves. In the period between December 23 and April 24, inflation continued rising and hit a peak of over 292%, which is an incredibly high rate of inflation. However, as we discussed at the start of today's video, it takes time for your changes to take effect and for inflation to start coming down. And over the past 8 months, we have seen a steady and consistent reduction in inflation. And the official figure for December shows that inflation is now down to 118%. And as you can see from the right-hand side of this chart, the reduction in December was the fastest rate that's been seen at any point in the last 12 months. However, as I also said at the start of today's video, it isn't really time to start celebrating just yet, because Argentina still has the highest rate of inflation out of every country in the G20, the 20 largest economies in the world. And you can see that the current level of 118% is almost 3 times the next highest rate in Turkey, and 118% is officially the second highest rate of inflation in the world. Only Syria has a higher rate. However, as you can see here, the last time that we got any data out of Syria was in April 24, and the only other country with an official rate of inflation above 100% is South Sudan, and that data relates to July 24. If we now have a look at what's going on a monthly basis, this chart shows the movement in prices measured against the previous month. And what you can see here is that when Javier Milei took over as president in December 23, the month-on-month movement in prices was over 25%. So that means that prices were going up 25% every single month at that point. Now, over the last 12 months, that level of price increases has reduced dramatically, and the latest figures for December show that month-on-month prices increased by 2.7%. So if you do a very simple annualization calculation by multiplying that figure by 12, it indicates that the current run rate for inflation for Argentina is around 32%, which is obviously a lot less than the 118%, but 32% is obviously still quite high. This chart shows the movement in food prices in Argentina over the past 12 months, and this is something that we always like to look at because food prices affect the poorest members of society the most because they're spending a much bigger percentage of their income on food. And as I've reported in previous videos, Argentina recently recorded a poverty level of more than 50%. So more than half the country are living in a state of poverty, meaning that they're spending virtually all of their money on food. And what you can see here is that in December 23, when Javier Milei took over, food prices were increasing year on year by 251%. The figure rose to a peak of more than 308% by March 24. However, over the past 9 months, there has been a rapid reduction in food price increases, and the figure for December 24 was 94.7%. So obviously that's a massive improvement compared with the 250% when Javier Milei took over. However, food price increases of almost 100% currently is still too high for a lot of people in Argentina. This chart shows the movement in interest rates in Argentina over the past 3 years. And what you can see here is that when Javier Milei took over, interest rates were sitting at 126%, and obviously that is extremely high. No business or consumer wants to borrow money if you're having to pay back more than 100% interest every single year on that loan. That is absolutely crazy. However, what you can see on the right-hand side of this chart is that since Javier Milei took over, there have been 8 consecutive reductions in interest rates. And the current rate of interest is sitting at 32%, which is obviously still quite high, but significantly less than the 126% when he took over. And I think what's most encouraging about this chart is that the interest rate cuts have come in conjunction with falls in inflation. Usually when a country has high levels of inflation, the response from the central bank is to increase interest rates to stop people from spending and discourage people from taking on debt. And therefore you have a contraction in demand and prices tend to come back down. However, currently in Argentina, there is a disconnect between what's happening with interest rates and inflation due to the fact that there's a high level of dollarization. A lot of people feel more comfortable using the US dollar rather than the Argentine peso. So what's the summary and conclusion today? Well, I wanted to post this video because Javier Milei has now been in power for more than 12 months. And so we should be starting to see some signs of recovery. And as we've talked about in today's video, there definitely are some signs. We're seeing things coming through now that show that positive things are happening in Argentina. We saw that the budget deficit has actually been turned into a surplus, and it's actually the biggest surplus in Argentina's history, which obviously is a huge accolade. But I think the problem with it is that it's come through a combination of an increase in exports, which is obviously good news for Argentina. They're now selling energy to other countries, so that's a big step forward in terms of gathering in more money for the government. However, one of the problems I think that the Argentine people have identified is that he's also introduced severe austerity measures. So he's cut back on spending, and so the people of Argentina are struggling at the moment, and more than 50% were officially recorded as being in poverty. So Javier Milei is achieving his goals, but he's doing it through a combination of expanding income and also cutting expenditure. And I think that cutting of expenditure is a problem for a lot of the poorer people in Argentina right now. But one of the other positive things that's come out of today's video is that the currency crawling peg, the devaluation of the peso that's being seen every single month, has been halved from 2% to 1%. So that's obviously a step in the right direction. However, the official exchange rate is still significantly below the black market rate. And so that's a problem because it means that a lot of people in Argentina are still preferring to use the US dollar rather than the Argentine peso. And as we saw in terms of the inflation figures, whilst it has come down significantly since he took over, inflation is still above 100%, and it's actually one of the highest levels out of all of the countries in the world. And until Argentina can get that level of inflation under control, it needs to come down to an estimated level of around 25% for the end of 2025. That's what a lot of economists are saying Argentina will achieve if it carries on at the current level. Until it gets to that level, I think things are still going to be unaffordable for a lot of people in Argentina, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on wages because if prices are going up, by more than 100%, so they're more than doubling every single year, then obviously you want your wages to be doing the same. And if businesses in Argentina were to agree to that, then obviously you would get a very vicious circle. So at the moment, what we've got is a combination of high increases in prices, but wages are not increasing at anywhere near that level. And that's why there's a lot of pressure being put on the poorer members of the Argentine society right now. However, the overall summary of today's video is despite the high levels of inflation that are still being seen in Argentina, we are definitely seeing signs of recovery. The budget surplus in 2024 was a big step forward. Javier Milei is looking to reduce all of the cost for the Argentine economy. He's privatising lots of nationalised businesses that were a drain on public finances, and he's got plans in place to turn Argentina around. However, it's going to take time, and the people of Argentina need to be patient. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, you found it useful, informative and thought-provoking. If you've liked what I've said, then please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for watching this video all the way through to the end, and here's something to put a smile on your face.